Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Always Bayern Chelsea show. Glad to be here with a new setup here. We got going, so hopefully there's no technical difficulties because we are preparing for our big, huge, massive, colossal live stream on Wednesday, Bayern Munich versus Chelsea. But this episode here today, Sunday, September 14th in the morning, got my cup of joe here, and we're ready to go talk about the weekend's matches. Bayern Munich thrashed Hamburg 5-0, and Chelsea drew Brentford 2-2. Jim, how are you?
I am doing all right. It was a interesting weekend of football. You basically had, let's be honest, one match. Hamburg, are they really a team? Who knows? But Chelsea, a tough draw, and good for Bayern for absolutely rolling, continuing their winning ways.
Yeah, it was definitely a good match for Bayern. For Chelsea, maybe not as much, but before we get into it, please like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. I got this banner going on down here if all the tech works out. So we're figuring things out here, and yeah, just really doing our best to improve the show and grow a community of fans here. Really appreciate everybody watching, everybody liking, commenting, subscribing, all that stuff. So again, thank you very much. And yeah, I'm pretty much ready to get into it. If you are, maybe we start with Bayern Munich.
Couple of late matches, to be honest, in America, and definitely would have been a lot later over there in Europe as well. Usually I'm used to waking up at 8 a.m. to at least watch one of these two teams, but this time still woke up early probably, but didn't end up starting the matches until 11:30 Central Time, so pretty crazy, and it was kind of a nice change of pace.
Yeah, it was. I was actually a little bit rushed at the end there because I did go to the Milwaukee Brewers baseball game, which was one of the best baseball games I've ever been to. Obviously, the Milwaukee Brewers, best team in baseball right now. So sorry if you're a European sports fan only, but I got to talk about those Brewers for a second here because down 6-1, down 7-3 or 7-4 in the ninth inning, and came back, tied it up, won in extras. What a game. So yeah, my day was just filled with back-to-back-to-back events, and man, what a game to be at. Go Brewers.
Brewers are a wagon right now, no doubt about that. I was watching the game last night, and I'd given up about 18 times in that game.
That's
Thought the
classic.
vibes were off, as I sometimes can sense when vibes are off with this Brewers team, but they proved me wrong, and they've been proving everybody wrong all year. So not only do we have two insanely fun teams in Bayern and Chelsea, but we also got the Brewers.
Yeah, and don't even get us started on the Packers. So before we make this a always Bayern, Chelsea, Brewers, Packers, Bucks, whatever podcast, why don't we just start off talking about Bayern? Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
All right, yeah. So Bayern Munich beat Hamburg, as we said, 5-0. Wasn't close at any point during the match. Wasn't a doubt in anybody's mind that Bayern was going to come through and dominate in this one. Just to mention the lineup quickly, Kompany went with a chalk lineup, as I predicted, with maybe one exception, I guess. But Kompany pushed all the right buttons in this one. In an amazing match for Vincent Kompany in terms of he put out the starters, they got out to an early lead, and then he could rotate them. I'm sure that was his plan all along, and it worked out. And not to mention, Kompany is a former Hamburg player before he was on City, so I think he only played for 3 teams in his entire career. So obviously some connections there, but yeah, Neuer was in between the sticks, and Neuer is back. I'm confident in saying that. He's back to being the best. He never really left, but last year had a lot of injuries, and even the last couple of years dealing with injuries and maybe not quite his best form, which is not quite his best form, is still one of the best keepers in the world, but at his best, he arguably is the best keeper in the world. So I think Neuer's back. I think he's proved it so far this season. Laimer was the right back. Upa and Tau were the center backs, and Stanisic was the left back. Great game from the back line overall. They weren't really tested, of course. Especially nice, in my opinion, for Ta, who I think has been struggling and struggled a little bit over the international break, to hopefully build up some confidence. But I think that back line is really going to be tested by Chelsea's attack, which is a great attack, and I think that we'll start to learn a little bit more about them after Wednesday. Midfield was Kimmich, of course, and Pavlovic, which Pavlovic, Goretzka, that's the one area where you don't exactly know who's going to start for this Bayern team, but it was Pavlovic in this one, and man, one of his best matches in a long, long time. Really great for him. Kimmich was great too, but I thought Pavlovic was even better, and amazing for Pavlovic, hopefully to gain some confidence in this one. The attack was Michael Olise, Serge Gnabry, Luis Diaz, and Harry Kane, and an outstanding game from the entire attack. All of them were firing on all cylinders, and their play was so fluid. It was so beautiful. This is how you want to see Bayern's attack look. So overall, just an outstanding game from Bayern. And as I said, Kompany pushed all the right buttons.
Yeah, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I imagine no matter how you look at this match, whether it's statistics on paper, if you watch the match, this was never close. Bayern scored early and scored often in that first half, and they really dominated the entire way. It was almost as if Hamburg, it looked like they weren't trying. Like Bayern was so good, and maybe they're just a much, much better team than Hamburg is. So no disrespect when I say that they weren't trying, but that's how dominant it really was, that it seemed like this team couldn't get in the match at all. And I really am going to credit that fast start for Bayern to the right-hand side, because they were so electric at the start. Bayern was funneling everything to that right-hand side with Michael Olise, Konrad Laimer, throw Serge Gnabry in there, link up with Kane as well, a little bit with Kimmich, Pavlovic, but that entire side there, I think, is what enabled Bayern to be so good so early and really locked in early in that match.
Yeah, I mean, like you said it, guns blazing right away, right out of the gate. Bayern was hot, 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 hot. And yeah, really the whole entire attack I thought was incredible in this match. Hamburg, I think, is at this point more of a Zweite Bundesliga side than they are a Bundesliga side, and I say that with respect because they are a historical club, but and they can always turn it around, right? It's so early in the season, but I watched them play. I watched their match against St. Pauli as well last week, and they seem like a Zweite Bundesliga side to me. So it's good, that Bayern had this game and was able to get off to such an early start, like you said, starting with Gnabry's goal in the 3rd minute. And, that's a contender for goal of the year. I think we probably both agree on that, but it was just a rocket of a shot from an insane angle. And usually you have one of two of those things being true, but both of them at the same time, to have a side angle and just fire a ballistic missile into the side of the net, pretty crazy. And Gnabry is peak form right now. He's 2020, he's London Gnabry, and he'll do this a lot, where he'll have a run of matches where he's at this insane level and then kind of dip down or get injured and go MIA for a while. But I'm going to give credit where credit is due, because amazing start to this season for Serge Gnabry. And also want to mention on this goal, some incredible link up, like you said, with Olise and Laimer on that right side, finding Serge. I think Kane was involved too. Kane was pretty much involved in almost every goal, point guarding things. And just, again, this is how you want the attack to play. It was beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote down Olise and Laimer. We're linking up a ton on the lead into that goal. And Serge putting that strike in, I mean, one of the best goals I've seen in European football this season so far. I think at the time I basically said it was the best goal. So the link up was pure right there. I mean, even leading into the second, you had Laimer, Olise, Kane, Pavlovic all linking up for the second goal. So all those guys right there, as I keep mentioning, were just so locked in to each other and where they were at all times.
Yeah, they were just all on the same page, and that's the thing. Again, 9th minute, that second goal. We're less than 10 minutes in, and Bayern's up 2-0. And the way that they're up 2-0 is important to mention. Like you said, Olise and Laimer finding Kane, and Kane just slides this beautiful ball through space, knowing that Pavlovic is going to be there. Pavlovic has some kind of just interesting but really good and smart movement leading up to that goal. And then again, Kane just the best playmaker, the best goal scorer. Like I know I say this every episode, but like the way that he sees the field, this game in particular was an amazing showcase of all of his abilities. Again, his ability to play make, his ability to find space, his ability to score, to finish, all those things were on full display in this match. So, and another really good finish from Pavlovic too, to mention in this one. Awesome start, awesome assist, awesome goal, just awesome play from the offense.
Yeah, and huge for Pavlovic gaining confidence. He's still a young guy, still growing into his game, what he can provide in the midfield and in the attack. I think in general we haven't seen a lot from him in the attack, really besides that wonder goal that he scored a while back. So going to be great for him going forward. And just the chances Bayern was getting early in this match, I mean, huge chances. Olise even had another chance that he would tell you that he should probably bag right in the beginning there. So everything Bayern was doing was leading to big chances.
Yeah, definitely. And Olise, great match. I'm not taking anything away from him. He struggled, I think, a little bit on his finishing. If you want to be nitpicky, he had 2 or 3 shots in this one that I think, like he said, he would tell you that he should make. Yeah, there was that one, and Bayern was just peppering in attacks at that point. Hamburg had one good chance when it was 2-0 that I can remember, where Stanisic kind of got turned around. Todd did a good job then of kind of like locking down the runner and slowing him down, allowing Stanisic to kind of get back into the play. And then with the two of them there, he just wasn't able to put off a good enough shot, and Neuer was able to easily save it. So that was maybe their best chance the entire game that I can just remember off the top of my head, to be honest with you. Because after that, we saw Kane's penalty in the 26th minute. You had a handball in the box, and it clearly was a handball. I know the handball rules are a little bit iffy and wishy-washy, but it was one of those where like Serge goes in and is kind of battling with a defender, and the defender like kind of cradles the ball on his chest for a little bit with his hand, which is like, that does affect the play. So I think you have to call that one. They didn't at first, and I was confused, but eventually they looked at it, called it. And when you see the opposite angle that the ref was at, you can see that it was a handball. With his back to the ref, it was kind of hard to see. But yeah, so there's that penalty. Kane comes up and just fires in a shot hard to the corner. Goalie guesses the right side, gets a good jump, and just still isn't able to save it.
Yeah, nice pen from Kane. The run-up was perfect and put in a perfect spot. Adding insult to injury, if you're Hamburg, really, it's unfortunate that happened. Players not trying to do it, but it's a handball every day of the week. As bad as VAR is, a lot of times it's the right call. I do want to go back to that chance for Hamburg because, you mentioned it, Stanisic does kind of make an error leading to that chance for them. And I do think a better team is going to put away that chance. I actually wrote down that I thought they should have done a lot better and potentially even have scored. And looking back, it reminds me of the first Chelsea chance against PSG in the Club World Cup final, where you're going with this over-the-top ball. It's misplayed by Mendes, who's the left back for PSG. Gusto is able to get the ball. He goes down, and then we know he shoots, gets deflected, then finds Palmer. So it was actually kind of an identical type play where Stanisic just barely misplays it, then the guy's able to run. So potentially that is something that Maresca could be looking at. Looking at this from a Chelsea perspective, coming into Munich on Wednesday, we know Bayern has a high line defensively, so that's maybe an area you could look at, kind of identifying a little weakness for Bayern. We know Stanisic, that's not his preferred spot at left back there. So it is something to note. It didn't matter in this match in particular, but going forward, it could.
That is Bayern's biggest weakness, is that back line. You have Stanisic and Laimer who get themselves in positions like that quite a bit because they're so far up the pitch and so aggressive that a lot of times their positioning isn't great and they're struggling to run back on a winger who's making a run. And obviously like Davies will get back there every time because he's one of the fastest players in the world. But you have someone like Stanisic and even Laimer, who is fast, is just not going to be able to make it back. And then you leave the center back so exposed, and Ta just isn't fast enough so far this year. He hasn't showed me that he's fast enough to cover stuff like that all by himself against the better teams. Obviously, he did a great job in this instance and shut him down. You're right. That is the way to exploit Bayern Munich, I think. You have a long ball or you have a mistake from one player and you're in. And the better teams will make them pay. And I think a team like Chelsea, I think Chelsea's attack is just good enough to make Bayern pay for sure with stuff like that.
Yeah, and to be clear, although this is a potential weakness for Bayern, my personal opinion is that this will not matter a percent in the league. Maybe one or two matches it'll matter. I think Bayern is so good on the attack, and they're still strong defensively that it won't matter. And Neuer is obviously one of the best keepers in the world still at this point, and he can erase mistakes just like that. Maybe put that more on the camera. But I think, the only chance it could really matter is against good teams. And even then, Bayern is still so good on the attack that it won't matter a ton. And we see right after, because they add a fourth. Bayern were just insane. Everything was going their way. You get a deflected goal for Diaz, which I got a note on this one. Great on Kimmich for taking a quick free kick here, kind of catching Hamburg off guard a little bit, leading to the Diaz goal. A little cheeky.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that you get when you have the experience of someone like Kimmich. He'll do stuff like that. He'll see the defense. He'll pick them apart. And then, a great job for Diaz to get a goal. Very, very productive player for Bayern so far. So it's awesome to see him coming in and just, I think, well, maybe this is club and country, but I saw a stat earlier that he has 4 goals and 4 assists so far this year, probably including the Super Cup. And I think he had at least an assist and maybe a goal for Colombia over the break, if I'm not mistaken. But nonetheless, great numbers so far. And again, I said this before, but I think once we get Davies back, that's really going to unlock Diaz. And I'm so excited to see, that left-hand side become just as dangerous and maybe sometimes more dangerous than that right-hand side, which, again, as you mentioned, they were just funneling all match this one. So awesome for Diaz to get that goal. Things were just falling for Bayern, like you said. That shot wasn't going in if it wasn't deflected. But again, great for Diaz to be there in the right spot at the right time.
Yeah, good on Diaz for keeping things moving in the right direction, endearing yourself to the Bayern Munich fans. And at this point, the match is over because we're exchanging texts back and forth about how Vincent Kompany needs to make sure to make some subs probably at halftime or right after halftime to rest guys for the big Champions League match the next week. So that is really a sign, you're up 4-0 and everything's going your way. So the fact that we were talking about subs really was a great first half for Bayern.
Yeah, and again, things were just falling for them, and you could tell because, Bayern went up 3-0 against Augsburg, blew it. 2-0 against Wiesbaden, blew it. And this match, you just knew it wasn't going to happen. They were home at the Allianz, but just the way that the attack was playing, you knew it wasn't going to happen. It was just a different scenario. It was just a different beast as opposed to those last 2 games that they did kind of choke the lead there. We were talking, and I wanted to see a couple subs. I wanted to see Kimmich go out and get some rest. That didn't happen. He plays 90 every single match. I wanted to see Kane get some rest. That eventually did happen. And then, maybe another winger, get Carl in there. I said I wanted to see Kim, which I also did not see in this one. So some more subs I maybe would have liked to see, but we did get those halftime subs. Like you said, Nico comes on and Guerrero comes on. Gnabry goes off. Upamecano goes off. Good there. Upa played, 90 every game for France over the break. So good to see him get a rest. And he was also on a yellow at that point. So smart move by Kompany. Yeah, Nico comes on, and honestly, I don't want to harp on this too much, but it was not a good match from Nico. It was a poor match in his debut. But I'm not worried about him at all. I don't think it's going to be something that persists. I think he's just kind of getting used to the team and all that stuff. Similar to Gittins, who I thought did not do very well for Chelsea. I think both of these guys will be able to kind of grow into their teams and be fine.
Agreed. I was never expecting Nico to be incredible in his debut. He needs time to work with his teammates, figure out how things are going to work. He's going into this match, kind of was a 2-striker system when he first went in. He was the guy further up the pitch. Kane, we know, likes to drop deep many times to be more involved with playmaking. So that was kind of what I was seeing when he first came in until Kane left the pitch. So, Nico, I think he had some nerves. His first touch was so heavy. It was insane. But he ended up, with 1 shot on target. in this second half that was a decent shot. And so he did find that one little moment. And with a striker, you just never know. You could be shit, and then score a goal. So ultimately, goals are going to be the stat that matters for him going forward.
Yeah, and speaking of goals, we did see the fifth goal come shortly after. 62nd minute, Kane completes I don't know if there's a German word for this, but there's always a German word for like perfect hat tricks and all this stuff. He gets an open play goal, I guess. So he had an assist, a pen, and an open play goal is where I was going with that, which is probably nothing, but just nice to see anyways, because he deserved a goal with his performance in this one. And yeah, a really awesome goal. The assist there was from Michael Olise, which again, great link up between the two. Kane's first touch on this goal was insane. It was his classic thing where like somebody passes him a ball from pretty far away and his first touch out of the air just beats the defender and just creates an opening. And so, yeah, he like volleys it out of the air the opposite way you think he would, and then creates that like micro amount of space, which for Kane is enough to slot in a perfect finish in the corner of the net. So again, like just stuff that you almost take for granted or you maybe don't notice when you kind of watch live, but then you go back and look at it and you're like, man, that's just such a special play. So Kane gets the goal there. It's 5-0 in the 62nd minute.
Yeah, Olise gets an assist here, and it was a nice assist, but this really is a Kane individual goal because the play starts all the way back on the defensive side. Kane has the ball, makes a pass to somebody, ends up getting the ball back, basically dribbles down half the pitch. The ball finds Olise eventually and gets back to Kane for the goal. So Harry Kane started that play and ended that play. It's what you want to see from Kane. He's one of the best players in the world, and he showed it on that goal.
Yeah, and he had one of those, I believe it was against Augsburg too. I almost said last week, but that wasn't last week because we had the international break, where he starts the goal literally in the defensive like line and ends up finishing it too. So yeah, just truly unbelievable stuff in terms of all around play. And I won't continue to glaze the guy because I do that every week here, but just insane, just truly insane stuff. Then we see some more subs right after that in the 64th minute, which was great to see. Carl comes on, which I was clamoring for, and Bischoff comes on as well. Unfortunately, Guerrero did pick up an injury, so he had to go out after being subbed on. And Kane also goes out, which is awesome. Awesome. You're up 5-0. Give the guy some rest. I don't want this guy to get worn out because he is the motor of this offense. You know, as I said, he's the playmaker, he's the scorer, he's a defender sometimes, he's literally everything. I will say, no goals or assists from Carl, but the kid is special, and I can just see it every single time he plays. He is so special. A few minutes after he came in, he almost had an incredible goal, like bending into the top corner, but the keeper actually made a really nice save. So Carl just continues to impress me. Again, didn't get on the score sheet, but was just a nuisance for the defense and almost scored minutes into his time on the pitch.
Yeah, he looked like a great player in this match. I think if you're Vincent Kompany, you need to find a way to get this kid some minutes in the league, in the Pokal, whatever the case may be, maybe even Champions League against a lesser opponent. You just need to find a way to rest Olise a little bit. This kid is a good replacement for Olise. He's not Olise, but he shows a lot of promise, and I think it's going to do wonders for you if you get him the minutes that he deserves.
Yeah, and one thing that I really like about Carl, too, is he's not afraid. I don't know what his stats were in this one, but there were times earlier this year where he actually like lost the ball quite a bit, which normally would be bad, but for me, it's only bad if you lose the ball a lot and then you kind of go into a shell and don't do anything else afterwards. But he just continues to attack and be brave and make chances, even, you know, with losing the ball. So again, it's not something that I like want to see, but it just shows me that he has the right attitude. And I think Bischoff has the right attitude as well. Coming on there and just, you know, it wasn't the best performance from him, but it wasn't bad whatsoever. And just every time I see him, I'm inclined to want to see him more, basically. So again, good from Bischoff. And then you also see Sasha Bouet come on. Diaz comes off there. So again, good to get him some rest, a lot of international play. But the second half overall was just slower after that point, which you would expect. You know, Bayern brings in these subs. They're still making chances, but it was just slower. and no more goals fall, and the match ends 5-0. So pretty much everything you want to see from a Bayern fan. Great attack, solid defense, subs come on, you get to rest some guys and head in hopefully to the Champions League matchup next week strong.
Yeah, second half, really nothing to note, to be completely honest. I think Bayern lacked the motivation to keep pushing ahead to score goals, which is fair when you're up 5-0, 4-0 at half. So I think if they wanted to score 8 or 9, they quite easily could have. They just maybe didn't feel like doing it in the second half.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. And I think the subs too kind of like alter the flow of the game. And with Bayern, I mean, we've seen it a lot so far. Things just kind of tend to fall apart when some of these key guys go out. And I'm not gonna like talk about that too much or harp on it because it was such a good game. So there is that. It's kind of to be expected, and just overall, got to be happy with that performance. I'll throw some match awards out there before we talk about Chelsea. My man of the match was Kane. Nothing else to say that I haven't said about him. My Robin of the match actually was Pavlovic. I thought Pavlovic was awesome in this one throughout. His vision is great in the midfield. His passing is great. The way that he just sets up play is great. And again, like, so huge to get him back and have confidence again, because he hasn't put up amazing performances so far this year. He hasn't been bad, but he certainly hasn't been this good. My underrated player of the match is Serge Gnabry, opening things up with that goal, and the guy just gets so much hate day after day that I feel like he's always underrated. I would say Goretzka's the most hated guy on Bayern Munich by the fan base, but I would say Serge is the second most hated. So to get him out there and just, again, continuing the strong start to his year is awesome. My defender, I'm going to give it to Laimer, with a special shout out to Ta. Laimer just was more involved because of the nature of his game, his aggression, his position, whatever you want to say, his link up with Olise. But Ta was super solid, and I could easily see you giving it to Ta.
Yeah, I'll go with two quick awards here, both combining into one man of the match, moment of the match. For me, it's going to Serge Gnabry getting the goal right to start the match, and that is the moment of the match because it sets the tone, sets the pace that Bayern are going to play at against this weaker team, and from there, Bayern never looked back.
Can't disagree with anything you said there. Shall we talk about Chelsea and Brentford now? 2-2. Draw.
Yeah, let's do it. It was a 2-2 draw, as you mentioned. North London, I've been talking about it a lot. Chelsea to start the year, staying in London, which is huge. And unfortunately, they haven't really taken advantage. Currently sitting at 8 points in the table, 5th in the Premier League early on. Was hoping for better, but it is what it is at this point. No losses. And, it was an interesting match. And I'll start with the lineup because you're coming off an international break. Some guys are hurt. You didn't know for sure who was going to be available. A lot of rotation in this one for Maresca, which we were both expecting. We saw Sanchez at keeper, and then from left to right, we saw Yoral, Hato, Tosin and Chalba, center backs in there, and then Fofana. That's right. I had to think about that for a minute because it wasn't Reece or Gusto.
Yep.
Yeah, so you technically had like 3 center backs basically, and then Hato was the left back inverting into midfield. And then we saw Enzo Fernandez, Caicedo, the usual duo in midfield there. Then we had Buenanote, who got the start kind of in the Cole Palmer role, attacking midfield spot. Pedro Neto on the right, Gittins on the left, João Pedro up top at striker. Super interesting lineup. As I said, some rotation, new guys getting some minutes. What were your thoughts when you saw it released?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of what we predicted, what we expected. I was surprised by that back line. I'm not going to lie. I was interested / curious about how that Fofana at right back situation would work out. I thought for sure it'd be Gusto. But otherwise it was more or less we were expecting a lot of changes like this. And Enzo basically did the opposite, I think, of what Kompany did, which Kompany started his better players and hoped to get out early and sub, whereas Enzo kind of did the opposite. I think was hoping to hold it down for a half or so and then sub on some of his better guys, which I think was the right move here. I mean, it's a different beast playing Hamburg, who's basically a Zweite Bundesliga side where you're going to go up big pretty much. Whereas Brentford, who knows where they'll end up, but roughly a mid-table side in the Premier League, way different. So I think it was smart from Enzo, and it actually really almost worked. Like Chelsea was up 2-1 at the end and kind of gave up a goal last minute. So I can't really complain about the lineup. Again, I don't know if I love the back line there, but I understand what he was going for at least.
Yeah, I think my problem with it is, number one, Brentford away is always a tough kind of bogey team match for Chelsea for whatever reason. And
after a break too.
The concern was that you don't really have any extra attackers in that back line. Usually you have Cucurella who's going to push up, maybe Gusto who's going to push up, help the attack. You had Hato, who this is his first start in the Premier League, a new league for him, trying to invert in the midfield. Kind of looked like crap, to be honest, which I don't really blame him for. And then you have Fofana, kind of that third center back. He doesn't provide anything either. So to me, it's like, yeah, you are kind of playing for the second half when you know you're going to make adjustments, but that's a pretty risky play. And so I didn't necessarily love that just because you're really just, as I said, riding a lot on the second half. Again, maybe you should do better against Brentford, who isn't the greatest team of all time. But still, I just thought that was an interesting move kind of for those reasons.
Yeah, I do agree with you. And like I said, tough to trust that back line. You see it with Bayern sometimes too, but and now Bayern's back line is more used to playing together. But at first, when you had the Davies injury, Upa was injured last year. My point is, these guys have never played together on Chelsea. So you throw Hato in there, but then you also throw Fofana as the right back. Like that might be a little bit too much change to handle. Not to mention you have the center backs who have been playing together for a little bit, but typically don't when everybody's healthy. So it's going to be tough. And I know that you expect to hold off Brentford, but it's asking kind of a lot with a brand new back line.
Yeah, and let's talk more about that back line because it plays a huge role in what ended up happening in the first half. So coming in, I talked a lot about how Brentford is great with set pieces. We'll get to that late in this game. But, I didn't necessarily mention Brentford on the counter because I think losing Vissa and Buemo over the course of the transfer window, you're expecting them to not be as efficient and effective and speedy on the counter without those guys. But early in this match, we saw Brentford get a pretty decent chance where they end up having a one-on-one and Tosin puts out a leg to block. And that ends up being the exact same chance that they then later get 30-something minute of the first half where they end up scoring. It's a quick break, brilliant pass from Jordan Henderson, finds Sade, who finds himself one-on-one again with Tosin and ends up putting it under the leg this time for the goal. But with this Chelsea back line, they're slow. They're just not quite together. And this is just a huge worry for me because you're without Colwill, who's a massive leader in this back line. Tosin, much as I love him, he's just very slow. Then you got Chalobah, again, a solid defender, makes a lot of good clearances, things like that, fundamentally pretty sound, but he's not a world beater. And then, you got Fofana there who isn't going to get back in time. And at his best, most fit, is super fast. But let's be honest, the guy's always injured. And right now, he's just not himself. And that was a recipe for disaster. And that's how Brentford score.
Yeah, agreed. Tosin isn't as quick as you'd like him to be. He gave Brentford way too much space on that goal, way too much space, and you just can't give top teams, even mid-table, whatever, teams in the Premier League that much space. These guys are talented enough; they're gonna make you pay.
Those are the type of goals that we see Chelsea be vulnerable at times. We saw at Fulham; it was disallowed, but identical type goal. So just tough overall, and really nobody to blame but that back line. Kind of moving to the attack in this first half, they showed moments and flashes of some good link-up play at times. I thought early on, the loanee from Brighton, Facundo Buonanotte, looked decent. They were getting some balls to him in kind of that right middle pocket that Palmer usually operates in. And I think if it would have been Palmer, he would have had at least a shot or two off, maybe a better chance at an assist to somebody else. So, he looks like he shows some potential, but ultimately just wasn't doing enough on the day. Tough with new teammates. And then Neto, I thought, was maybe your best attacking option for Chelsea on the day. Chalobah did find him with a great ball in behind that he just barely couldn't get a good touch on. And so, I think Neto was your best option. And for me, Jamie Gittins to start this year has not shown me enough. He needs to use his speed quicker and more effective. Don't dilly-dally with the ball. Get the ball and go right at your defender. I think that's what he has to do in order to be the piece that Chelsea need him to be.
I agree, yeah. I think it's a little bit maybe on Enzo, maybe a little bit on the teammates, but for sure mostly on Gittins, just because he's not being used to his best ability. He's not being used in a good way to showcase his strengths. I want to see him get the ball and run. I want to see him use his pace, use his speed, but instead he's, at least in this one, kind of trying to dribble by people. He's not the kind of guy that you just get him the ball in front of 5 defenders and he'll dribble through them. Like, that's not his strength. So I don't know if I want to see him be used wider or what, but again, yeah, not the best game for Gittins. I actually thought Neto had a pretty solid game. I thought Neto was pretty underrated overall throughout this one. And then, yeah, in that first half, I think Enzo Fernandez as well was pretty bad. I thought he turned it around in the second half, but first half was just not progressing the ball, was like losing the ball, kind of making bad like runs and like challenges and stuff. I don't know. I didn't like what I saw out of him in that first half. Again, turned it around. But yeah, then you have like João Pedro, who was almost non-existent for most of that first half, and same with Buonanotte. I didn't really have much to note from him in that first half either.
Yeah, I think going back to Gittins, the tough thing for me is I think he is being put in pretty solid positions. I understand these matches haven't been super open back and forth where he maybe will thrive, but every time he gets the ball out there, if he goes right away, he's got one defender to beat, whether he's way out wide or a little closer in. But as I said, I think if he just goes quicker, he'll have more success. If you just sit there with the ball right away and let a second defender come over to help, yeah, then you're obviously not going to do something great with it right away. So I think he just needs to figure that out and maybe be a little bit better in his decision-making there. And, I'm not panicking at this point. It's 4 Premier League matches into the season for him, so he's got a long way to go. But, I think in general, it's kind of a little preach of patience here for the entire squad, because when you bring guys in together, they are going to need some time to mesh, and I think hopefully we will see that over the coming weeks here with Chelsea.
Yeah, the thing is too, like, I don't know, Hato was non-existent as well to me in this one, and maybe Cucurella does a better job of inverting, and that can push Gittins out to get the ball and operate better. But again, like you said, he needs to make that decision fast once he gets the ball, and he needs to go. So, I don't know if Cucurella being more of a presence will do that, but you have to hope. And you have to hope Hato, like you said, just gels better too, and the whole team gels a little bit better going forward.
Yeah, I read some limited info about Hato coming in, and I don't want to rag on the guy at all because he's new to this league and he's going to need time to learn. And I think we're used to Cucurella just being such a great left back. I think he probably is the best left back in the Premier League right now. So what he provides defensively and in the attack is so strong. So I think it's just tough for Hato because he's got to find his own way in whatever he can provide for this Chelsea team. And it will be different than what Cucurella provides. So we did see that, thankfully, in the second half for Chelsea. I don't have it up right in front of me, but I think they brought on Reece and Mark right at half, taking off Hato and Fofana.
And George.
That's right. And George also came on for Buenanote. So we heard from Maresca after the match that Fofana was only ever going to play 45. Same with Hato and Buenanote. Fofana, because he's injured all the time, coming off all that. Buenanote, Hato kind of meshing with the new team. They were just going to need some time. Hato, new league. Buenanote, probably not up to fitness from when he was at Brighton. But those were the subs that were made. George to me is a nothing burger, will always be a nothing burger until he shows me more. But James and Cucurella, they just make you feel good inside. They really do. They're so strong. Chelsea need them. I know what you're going to say about Reece, and it's true. Him and Cucurella, they just make your team so much better when they're on.
Yeah, it's almost a little bit of a joke at this point, but there is like seriousness to it, and I do truly believe that James is Chelsea's most important player. But Cucurella too, like you said, they come on, and the match in the second half, and Enzo, I'm sure, talked to the team at half. I'm sure he had a hand in this too, but the match in the second half was almost like a different match. I mean, first half was mostly boring, Chelsea pretty much doing nothing on the attack, but James and Cucurella, like you said, a calming presence, but they also just contribute into that attack and like start play from the back, which is what you need if you're going to score a goal basically in the Premier League against a team like Brentford, who's maybe a little bit more compact. And yeah, I mean, again, completely different half. They come on and Chelsea instantly looks just more shored up and just better overall.
Yeah, Chelsea looked like a different team, which makes sense when your best players come on. Ultimately, Palmer comes on as well. We know he is Chelsea's best player, their biggest threat in attack, essentially. When he's on, everything changes. And I had mentioned that, Buenanote was getting in good spots at times, and that if Palmer would have been in those spots, it's a different ballgame. And we saw that in the second half. Palmer, I believe, came on for Gittins, correct?
He did, yeah, and the offense kind of shifted a little bit with George too.
Yeah, so at this point, you kind of have George. He was playing some center forward before Palmer came in. Then I think once Palmer came in, it was Pedro kind of until he came out back up top. I think George went over to the left wing, Neto, kind of right wing, and Palmer at the 10. But there was some mixing and matching in there as well. I saw different players at different spots at times. So it was interesting, but we know with Palmer, he can make something out of nothing. And, eventually Chelsea do get a massive, massive breakthrough. I don't have the minute written down, but it was an Enzo pass from the right-hand deeper side into the box, loops in. Pedro doesn't quite get ahead on it, but does enough to battle the ball. It drops to Palmer, who fires it in, and it was the break Chelsea needed. It really was, because you're sitting here thinking, man, are we just going to not score any goals today? And thankfully, the dam did break there.
Yeah, 61st minute. Palmer comes in, I think, around the 55th or something, but scores that goal, I think, in the 61st. Yeah, the offense just looks instantly better when he's on. And again, also credit to James, credit to Cucurella, but Palmer comes on, they get that goal, and finally you're kind of like moving to the edge of your seat and you're thinking, all right, this Chelsea team is going to be firing again.
Yeah, and with Cucurella, you see him at times in the second half getting way up the pitch, and I thought there could have been moments where he could have had shots himself, and we were never seeing Hato in any of those positions.
Yep.
Whether they told Mark to just push up higher than they were telling Hato, I can't necessarily comment on that, but I think he's just so comfortable doing that, and so that's what he was able to do. And then with James at the back there, you just feel safer, and I think that just allows the defenders to kind of be themselves more. And so I think, again, those two players coming in were so massive.
Yeah, well,
Palmer,
you have different styles too. Like with Bayern, when Ito was playing, I never, because Hato, right, is a left-footed center back as well as a left back.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sure he's not as comfortable inverting, and I felt like that with Ito. When the one match he wasn't hurt last year, Bayern played him against Leverkusen, and it was a match where Bayern was just midweek Champions League, third match in 8 days, just trying to get a draw, and that was like a great defensive performance. Whereas obviously Davies is bombing up and down like Cucurella does. So yeah, I just wanted to note that with the, being a true left back versus a left-footed center back. And I don't know enough about Hato to really say, but that's kind of just what it reminded me of.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I think it's what we'll see as the season continues on and how they use Hato compared to Cucurella. And we did see 75th minute. I do have this written down. Palmer misses a huge chance. It was kind of a Neto break, and it's a chance Palmer would tell you he's got to put away. And I'm thinking, oh, man, we're going to be up 2-1 right here. And so you were seeing Chelsea able to break down the Brentford defense in this second half in multiple ways, whether it was Neto on that right-hand side, Palmer through the middle. Even Enzo looked so much better in the second half. So he was doing a lot of playmaking as well. And that, to me, is a positive moving forward into this next week.
Yeah, definitely. Palmer, in my mind, had 2 shots that he could have made in that second half, as well as the one that he did make. Second one was more similar to what I was saying before about Olise with Bayern, where it's like, it's not like a gimme of a shot, but a guy like Palmer, a guy like Olise can and oftentimes does make shots like that. But the first one in the 75th, like you said, should have made. I mean, he just should have made it. But he did score that first one, so you can't be like overly harsh on the guy.
Yeah, that other one was much later in the match, kind of a really tough short hop ball right to him. So then he skies it. And again, he would probably tell you that he should put it on target, ends up not. But we do see a massive moment by arguably Chelsea's best player over the last couple seasons, a guy that doesn't score a lot, but when he scores, they're insane goals. I mean, this guy's goal catalog, they're all bangers.
They're all bangers.
Caicedo, we went nuts when this goal went in. It was – I'm trying to think how this – play ended up happening. Oh, so this is when Garnacho comes on.
Oh, yeah.
He comes on for Pedro.
Nacho cheese.
So we're like, oh, man, Pedro comes off, whatever, probably needs some rest after Brazil. Nacho Cheese, who had predicted to score in the second half, comes on, immediately makes an impact, finds his way down that left wing, cuts the ball across with his left foot. Brentford defender tries to clear the ball out, finds his way to Moises Caicedo. Banger of a goal from Moises. Absolute banger.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about Serge Gnabry's ballistic missiles, but there might be some coming from Ecuador, right? Yeah, okay. There might be some coming from Ecuador as well, because man, oh man, that one was just, I thought it was going to burn a hole in the back of the net. You have the security guard or whatever, the guy in the orange vest behind the goal, totally flinching. Like, he thought it was going to burn a hole through the net and smack him straight in the face too. So awesome shot by Caicedo. Awesome moment. Definitely Chelsea's moment of the match in this one, because yeah, this is later in the match, 85th minute, I think. And yeah, I mean, you think that Chelsea just won the match, but unfortunately that wasn't to be the case today.
Yeah, I mean, I thought we had escaped the G-Tech Community Stadium with 3 points, and it would have been a massive 3 points. Would have been absolutely huge. Moises would have been the hero on the day. And, we haven't talked a lot about Moises, but he was tremendous once again. Just does all the little things correct defensively.
Yep. All match.
Tackles. Yeah, all match he was solid. Even in the first half, I thought he was like the one guy that was really solid.
Yeah, me too.
And here's where we're going to talk about something that I correctly brought up in our preview, was that Brentford love to score from set pieces. And we've also talked about how the long throw-in has been a huge part of not only the Premier League, but just football in general this season. It
might be back. It might be back.
And we get it in extra time here.
93rd, according to my note.
A long throw-in, and let's be clear, a couple things to complain about. Number one, these throw-ins. You got to force these guys to back up where the ball actually went out. I get you have some space, but this guy just kept walking down. making him get closer to have a better throw-in. That's a little BS in my opinion. Nonetheless, he throws it in, takes a deflection off a Brentford head, finds its way to the back post where Garnacho's asleep. Maybe Reece James can do better, but let's be honest, the Chelsea defenders did not defend this well at all. Congested to the ball, which is how things always break down on long throw-ins.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you said there. I'm putting probably most of the onus on this one on Garnacho for not marking, but James also should have cleared it, in my opinion. Unfortunately, missed it, and I'm rarely critical of James, so take that as you will. But yeah, I mean, it was sort of similar to the second goal, I believe, that Germany gave up against Slovakia. After Serge scored for Germany or no, it was the equalizer, I think. Serge scores, puts him up, and then doesn't mark on, I think it was a set piece, maybe not a throw in, but regardless, corner actually, maybe. But regardless, yeah, a ball just sneaks back to the kind of almost far post, and a man is left unmarked and just scores. And it's just such a bummer to have an equalizer in that way.
Yeah, such a massive let off because the way it happens is so painfully brutal for Chelsea. And it's just unfortunate because you fight back, and that's a tremendous job of fighting back. It still is getting a draw, but very, very disappointing to end it like that way. The other thing that I will complain about, as I said, there's a couple things. It kind of came out after the match that, technically this was an offside play because you have Quatara on Brentford who is in an offside position when the ball is thrown and then makes a play for the ball, goes up to head it. So he was the guy kind of by Reece James. When you're offside and you go up to make a play, that is offside and the play should be blown dead. You'll see this a lot of times like on super long balls from goalkeepers. And a lot of times the guy's offside, he'll kind of go up to make a play. He doesn't actually even touch it, but the sideline ref will blow it dead because he did make a play. Even if the defender gets it and controls it, they'll oftentimes call the offside because you can't even make a play on the ball. And that's exactly what happened here. I've seen multiple accounts at this point say, yeah, VAR definitely screwed the pooch on this one. It's unfortunate. You can look at this a couple ways. Chelsea got an advantage against Fulham. Now they get a disadvantage against Brentford. Kind of evens out. Nonetheless, in the moment here, you can just look at it as Chelsea got screwed. And ultimately, you have to defend better, and that's what you're going to take away from this. But I did have to bring that up and note it because it's going to be something we discuss throughout the year about VAR. We're through 4 weeks. 2 games have been massively affected by VAR. That's insane. 50% of games so far.
Yeah, I didn't notice it live, but I take your word for it, and it is unacceptable. I mean, if that's the rule and it doesn't get called that way, that's no good. That's not how the game is supposed to be played. And unfortunately, yeah, we've seen some really consequential decisions or indecisions maybe made or not made by VAR in the season so far. And I don't know if it's going to get better. If I was a betting man, which I'm not, I would say it isn't going to get better, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to get better. It is what it is at this point. We'll just have to do our best. And as I said, this is on Chelsea. You have to defend better. You have to take the game into your own hands and win it. Don't let the refs decide the game for you. Don't let the other team decide the game for you. So I think Chelsea would agree with that. You have to win those matches if you want to win the league as well. So I think Chelsea are in a fine spot. 2 wins, 2 draws at this point, no losses. Easier start to the year, so you're going to have to, probably win some matches against tougher opponents coming up here. But, I still like the spot Chelsea are in.
Yeah, as long as VAR doesn't blow it for Bayern in the Champions League Wednesday, I think I'll be fine. No, but seriously, yeah, it is maybe not exactly the start you wanted for Chelsea, but also not the worst possible start. So you kind of, you take it and run at this point, and you really gotta show up better and stronger against some of these better teams in the Premier League. I will say, if you want to be in a title fight, which is, I think it's going to be tough with Liverpool this year, but regardless, like you got to show up stronger against some of these better teams because you probably won't get a point against some of these better teams if you play like this.
Oh, definitely agree. Yeah, I think there's many things Chelsea need to clean up here, and I'm sure Maresca will definitely let the boys know exactly that.
Yeah, so do you have any match awards for this one? I just jotted down a couple. For me, I have Caicedo as man of the match.
Yep.
Robin, I'm giving to the duo. I don't know. I almost said duality. I guess it's kind of a duality. The duo of James and Cucurella coming in at the second half to kind of change things for the team. Underrated, I'm actually going with Neto. I think, I want to say I think Palmer had a solid match too, but I did think that Neto was at least providing some life into that offense for a lot of the first half when a lot of players weren't. He was laying in crosses and there was really just nobody there to receive them. And then defender, it's tough. I think none of the defenders did great in that first half, none of the starters. And I already shouted out James and Cucurella, so I might give it to Sanchez. Believe it or not, I think Sanchez actually had a couple of really good saves that we didn't talk about in this one. Thought Chalobah did pretty good, but I think that Sanchez maybe deserves a nod for a couple of those saves.
I think those awards are exactly how I would have it, actually, because Caicedo is the clear Batman on the day, man of the match. And as I mentioned 1,000 times, James and Cucurella coming on completely changed the match. So they are the next two most important players. And while Palmer does get that goal, I think Neto had just as well of an impact, arguably creates the best chance in that second half that Palmer missed. So love those awards. And I think, I used to kind of have this award where I would talk about a player that didn't have the greatest day. I forget what I was calling it, but
bad day at the office.
Bad day at the office. And I think everyone listening can agree. Just follow me on this. The bad day at the office is
I hope I know what you're going to say.
Enzo Maresca's
shoes and jeans.
His jeans. No, the shoes were clean. But the shoes were Nikes.
But the combo, the thing is the combo. You can't wear those shoes with those jeans. I think the jeans are the biggest offender in this case, but the shoes and the jeans together, ooh. And I agree, they're clean shoes on their own.
Completely fair. Yeah, a wild move to start wearing jeans, but hopefully that does not affect anything else for Chelsea going forward.
Yeah, and one more thing to mention too from styles of coaches. Actually, two. One, Coln's coach wears a jersey, which is freaking amazing. I've never seen that in my life before, but I've watched Coln the last 2 weeks now, and their coach wears a jersey, so that's awesome. Second thing, Vincent Kompany has been wearing this Y3 t-shirts, hats, all this stuff for a while now, and I've finally figured out what it is. It's like an Adidas like designer brand collaboration. So obviously Bayern has the Adidas partnership, but just interesting. And Kompany, he does have pretty good sense of style. So maybe Enzo will come to the Allianz on Wednesday and just kind of pick up a thing or two.
That'd be nice. Hopefully you can learn a few things from him.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be it for us here today at Always Bayern Chelsea. Please subscribe, please like, please comment. It's all down there on the banner. We're up in the ante, we're up in the quality, and maybe more importantly, we are streaming the Bayern Chelsea match on Wednesday. We're going to give you a preview next week, but that stream is going to be something special. It's going to be something electric. It's going to be something definitely groundbreaking. So please, please, please like and subscribe and tune in for that one.
Do all those things. Watch us on Wednesday. It's going to be insane. Up the Chelsea.
Mia San Mia.